Hey everyone, it's Bob. Welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by Tim Borys, a business builder who wears many hats, including founder, CEO, organizational performance coach, executive leadership coach, keynote speaker, author, and fellow podcaster. Tim hosts the Working Well podcast, also on the WRKdefined Podcast Network. Tim brings a fascinating perspective shaped by his journey from elite athletics to workplace well-being, leadership, and sustainable performance. In this conversation, we explore human performance, burnout, adaptability, why the human side of work matters even more as AI and automation accelerate. If you're thinking about how to perform at a high level without sacrificing your health or well-being, or how leaders can better support people through constant change, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Thanks for listening. Let's go chat with Tim. Hey everyone, welcome back to Elevate Your AIQ. I am your host, Bob Pulver. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Tim Borys. How you doing today, Tim?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me on the show, Bob.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. We met through our WRKdefined Podcast Network, so it's always good to do a crossover episode now and again, and really like the work that you're doing both with your company as well as your podcast. So let's dive into some of the things that you're focused on. Let's start with a little bit about your background, Tim, and what brought you to where you are.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a strange ride to get to where I am now, doing the executive coaching and consulting. So right now I'm a certified executive coach, and I do, workplace performance consulting for companies, more around sustainable performance and well-being. Sometimes I would call it a chief well-being officer. Started on the elite athlete side. So I was an elite athlete myself, played baseball and hockey growing up, and then realized I basically became a strength conditioning coach for, world class and some pro athletes. 30 years ago, that didn't pay the bills like it would have today. And so I had to earn some other money. So went into personal training and got into the health club industry and realized that all my clients were stressed out, burnt out corporate executives, people not taking themselves, really high performers that were driving themselves into the ground. And I took some of those athlete training principles and really tried to apply them to the gym environment, and realized that nothing I did in the gym would help unless I changed the life outside the gym. And that got me looking into workplace mindset, corporate culture, and what I could do to help people be healthier and higher performing in that. And that sort of put me into, these clients would say, hey, I'm building a gym in our office. Can you come in and run some services from there? Tell us what equipment we need. And so I got into designing corporate fitness centers and running them. And then I realized we're seeing the same 10% of people that would use a gym, whether the company paid for it or not.
Right.
I said, how do we impact the other 90% that don't want to step foot in the gym? And that got us into doing corporate workplace wellness consulting and running programs for companies, and did that for many years, and then realized that, HR seems to be the blocker here. And nothing's really going to change until the C-suite starts to buy into what we're doing. And that got me into the executive coaching and the consulting. So ended up where we are now. And COVID definitely changed our business model. We are running tons of corporate fitness centers that were closed for the better part of 2 years, sort of threw a bucket of cold water on our business growth.
Right.
And which forced me to focus a bit more on the executive coaching. I was heading that way anyway, but It was a swift kick in the butt to do it faster.
Sure. Oh, that's really fascinating. I guess I and most people probably come at it from the other way, whereas you're so focused on your work and career progression, making money, etc., that you tend to neglect the fitness side and the sort of holistic view of your overall well-being, I guess, is, well, I don't want to, you're the expert, so I'll let you sort of describe that, but it just seems like you've come at it from the atypical perhaps pathway, but still led you to what I think is important, is people think about mind, body, and work-life balance. Like, it's a balance of all of these things, right?
Absolutely. And I always say that elite athletes can perform at the level they do because they have a foundation of human performance underneath it. They have the rest, recovery, they've put in the training, they understand their body, they listen to their body. Whereas corporate high performers seem to think that those rules don't apply to them. It's the people who are grinding 80, 90, 100-hour weeks and wondering why they burn out, wondering why there's no joy in their life. And they're just showing up. I call them the corporate zombies.
Yeah.
That are there, they're putting in hours, they're bums in seats. But from a leadership and shareholder return standpoint, there's a lot of wasted capacity in corporations these days. And so I've seen firsthand, like for running my own business, it was quite interesting when I started my own company, left the personal training field. I was contracting in health clubs at the time. I started my own business, opened a personal training studio, and as I got into the business aspect of it more, running the business, I forgot about just ignored all the things that I'd been telling clients and started grinding and went through my own burnout and realized that I've neglected my own health. And as I started dialing that in, it was a great reminder again of how important it is and how people can perform at an incredibly high level for a long period of time by following those things. And it's not always more hours equals more output. When Stephen Covey, sharpen the saw.
Right.
When you take that time out to focus on your own health, your well-being, I always say sleep is one of the most underrated aspects of health. And when we look at the sleep factors for most corporate employees, people are chronically sleep deprived. And it's not just the company's fault, it's society in general has shifted to being on screens all night and things like that. And so simple, what I call just human performance factors can make an incredible difference. But companies I believe, have a mandate to help employees do that. Employees still have a personal responsibility in it, but people spend most of their waking hours at work. So why not help people perform better? Because it's going to help the company. It's going to help them build loyalty.
Yeah, I'm glad we're gonna dig deeper into these topics because, when I think about human potential, right, which is sort of the underlying theme of a lot of what this show is about, whether your potential to succeed, to perform at your best at work, as well as in aggregate, what is the collective sort of human potential of a team? And that's, today, as well as, humans plus AI, what's the potential of that sort of synergy there. But I do think it's important to think, obviously preaching to the choir, but to think about, you can't maximize that human potential if you're burnt out, if you're not getting sleep, if you're not taking care of yourself. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like thinking, well, what a hypocrite I am because I don't take good enough care of myself. But yeah, I mean, I think you need to take this sort of 360-degree, very comprehensive approach about everything that makes you and helps you perform at your best. It's not just the sort of cognitive, decision making and the execution of tasks and things like that. It's am I in the right sort of mindset? Am I not? Am I able to fall asleep because I'm not weighed down by the demands of the next day and anxious about those types of things?
Yeah. I call it the human operating system. We have operations plans for the business, and our software systems are running on different OSs. Every human has their own human operating system that just gets neglected.
Yeah.
And when we know how to debug that and optimize it, we can see incredible performance. And I always say my focus is the Venn diagram of human performance, business strategy, and leadership. And so how those leadership in corporate culture, because I see those as fairly synonymous in many ways.
Yeah.
But how those three intersect is really the missing piece in most organizations these days. They have great business strategies, they have leadership training programs, but neither of those two things are optimized for human performance or considering even the human performance in a lot of cases.
Yep.
And as you're focused on the AI side, as technology and AI becomes so much more prevalent in everything we do, people can even more further neglecting the human side. And I believe we need to focus more on the human side, because the more technology driven, the more humans need to still be part of that picture.
Absolutely. So just this concept of human centricity, right? I talk about it so that we don't lean too far on to the technology and become too reliant on it. We don't want to outsource our critical thinking and some of our innately human capabilities and skills. But there's really a lot of facets too when we talk about human centricity. We want to make sure we're being fair in our decision making. We want to make sure that that the human is still, the user, and that we're not using AI to necessarily displace people from the work that they do and they derive meaning from. It's there to sort of augment our own capabilities and be a complement to all the things that we're capable of doing. But there's a whole other, sort of set of, attributes and characteristics underneath human centricity that leans towards where you're focused, which is, around, the wellness and well-being and burnout and what would be the human cost of some of these efficiency gains that, everyone is looking for.
Yeah. I'm very practical and understand the business aspects as well. And yeah, companies are always looking for efficiency gains. And as with any technology, there will be disruption in the market for sure, and jobs will be displaced. Just even think 15, 20 years ago, who would have thought there would be like social media managers and content creators and all these like dozens, if not hundreds of different types of roles that didn't exist prior to that. And so the number one human skill for thriving, I believe, is adaptability. We have to be able to adapt with our environment. Learn the meta skill is learning. You need to know how to learn and to do it quickly and to bring in diverse sources of knowledge to apply them to a given situation. And I think that's a lot of where learning and development is shifting, but people have to be very realistic that if you are in an administrative role right now, you probably won't have that role in even a couple of years, which so many people are scared of. And I know people's livelihoods are, that becomes a real fear. I tend to be a passionate optimist, I say, that with every change comes great opportunity. And there are so many new things that can be done if we have the mindset to see those opportunities and work toward them. And we can be doing something that is much more enjoyable and much more fulfilling. That we don't have to look past too many engagement surveys to realize that the majority of people aren't engaged at work. I think it's only 30 something % of people who say they're actively engaged at work, which tells me that people, I always use this saying, work sucks for so many people, and it doesn't have to. And so while people want the money, could they be doing something that they find more enjoyable and that still earns them a living? And I believe that there is going to be a lot of opportunity to do that as AI helps us do some of the more repetitive or mundane tasks. It will allow us to think deeper about a lot of the things and increase the performance that we do have. So I think there's opportunity, but it's going to be, there's going to be, we're not even in the messy middle yet with AI. We're still just breaking the surface of this change. And I think the next 5 years are going to be incredibly transformative. And people don't even know what's going to happen next week, never mind next year.
That's part of the challenge for the average person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't that uncertainty equates to risk, which means they might be disengaged, but it's better to be disengaged and not completely love what you do than to not have the ability to make a living, or they're not aware because they see the labor market as it is now, and it's not easy. I mean, the average, I think I saw a statistic the other day, like the average, at least experienced worker who's out of work is out of work for at least 6 months, right? So that's a pretty scary thought when the economy is not doing so great here. Well, at least here in the United States, parts of the border might be a little bit different, but it's things are not great, and so I think people are, they're cautious about making that move. And then the other thing is there's a lot of complexity in terms of what's affecting what how do I know where to go, what industries are growing versus shrinking, and what is my potential to learn some new skills and to make a pivot. I think people are really cautious about that, and they don't know necessarily what they're capable of. Just circling back to the human potential concept, I mean, maybe no one's helped them evaluate what their transferable skills are, and so they're not sure. I mean, maybe they're waiting for the AI use cases that say, well, let me get sign me up with an AI agent who can which can go out and you know basically be my personal recruiter and help me find things. I think they're waiting for some evolution there to say, well, I can't be out of work for 6 months. Is there AI, or there's AI solutions that can help me find a job in a week, right? So I think there's a lot that's weighing on people on top of them trying to put food on the table and other things that keep them up at night.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. And some of the coaching I do is around career coaching. And, I don't necessarily label myself as a career coach, but you can't ignore that that's on people's minds these days.
Yeah.
And so many of the conversations I'm having are about looking in the future. I have one client at a major tech company in particular that I'm thinking of. His job mandate is literally to replace himself. Like he and his team are building the AI that's going to put their department out of business.
Yeah.
And so he's coaching him to help lead his team more effectively because they're obviously worried. And on a separate part, I'm also coaching him to help find the next role for him. And he's looking within the organization and outside the organization, but that's a reality of work in a lot of places. And a huge part of it, the coaching process I help people on is the mindset shift. Is like there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that people don't know what the future is going to look like. And I always say that, yes, that is scary, but it's fact that everyone's having to deal with. And when we see a lot of people just sticking their head in the sand, and I've heard people saying, I'm not going to use AI at all. Like I don't believe in AI. And it's like, well, okay. It's like the people in the 80s, 70s, and 80s that were saying, oh, computers, these computer things, the change is happening. So
I know this happens all the time, right? Like it happened with computers, and it happened with the internet. It happened with, I'm never going to put my credit card into a website. I'm never going to, take a ride in someone else's car. I'm never going to stay at a stranger's, house or apartment, right? Like, and society just kind of evolves as we sort of, explain, that the risks have been mitigated to a large degree, and you know, humans are biased too. It's not the AI that's necessarily biased. I mean, you can worry about the scale at which it could exacerbate bias if it's not built responsibly and properly. But yeah, I mean, I think these are just waves of technological change that impact us societally, culturally, economically. And so, for me, I want people to pay attention, right? And then you can make a more informed decision, but just to have this sort of knee-jerk reaction, like this isn't safe. Oh, did you hear what happened to so and so? Taking anecdotal, information as just like this blanket, like, well, this clearly isn't safe. And so yeah, I mean, I'm concerned, and one of the reasons I do this show is because I want people to hear from experts like yourself about how this is. It's not, no one's really spared unless you want to go live completely off the grid, which was another sort of reaction that people had to technology in general. Oh, I'm not going to get a cell phone. I'm not going to use a credit card. I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to. It's like, what are you supposed to do, right? There's cameras on every corner of, at least, metropolitan areas, and obviously other places too. But there's a camera on everyone's doorbell now. I mean, you just can't escape some of the technological change. What you can do is be educated about what this all means, and then take the appropriate action that you can be comfortable with. But yeah, I just think right now at this time in late 2025, I just think there's a lot that's weighing a lot of people, and it's just overwhelming. And so it's hard because technology is moving so fast, and you know, my gut advice would be to just sort of pause, take a deep breath, and slow down. But it's not always easy.
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
Hi, this is Stacey Harris.
And this is Terry Zipper, and we're the host of the two podcasts under the HR Huddle.
On Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, we uncover the latest trends, truths, and challenges from Sapient Insight Group's groundbreaking research and our analyst insights, serving up everything you need to know about HR tech with no sugarcoating.
And on HR, we have a problem. We tackle the toughest workplace challenges head on, offering you expert advice and actionable solutions to help HR leaders thrive in today's fast-changing world. Whether you want the scoop on tech or tools to solve people problems, we've got you covered.
Take a listen and subscribe. If you want to become part of our community, we'd love to see you.
Yeah, I agree. It's not easy at all. And I think everyone goes through, and you go to the grief cycle or whatever, people go through that cycle at various rates and at various times. And I think as I said, we're just in the start of this change. And right now, I think a lot of the fear is just fear of what's to come. If we look, depending on your company and your industry, there has been some changes, but companies are hesitant right now as well. They're trying to invest in the future, but not knowing that it's going to change things. And employees are feeling that because companies aren't hiring as many people. Job market's a bit more stagnant. People are out of work for a bit longer if they're between roles. And that's starting to feed the fear. But when we look at it, most companies are still struggling to figure out the AI puzzle. When we talk about AI agents, it's really only a handful of the big tech companies and a few hobbyists that are using AI agents. And, something we talked about before is that going back again to the skill sets that people need, I'm a firm believer that every human will need strong leadership and communication skills moving forward, because while they may not be leading other people, I guarantee they'll be leading AI agents. And, I've got some colleagues that are deeply embedded in the Silicon Valley tech scene, and I've had conversations with them about agents, and they're saying, you see the thoughts of the one person unicorn company now. So these $1 billion companies with one person and a bunch of AI agents. And the conversation I had the other day with a friend of mine, she was saying, yeah, anywhere from 5 to 10 AI agents will be, like, one person will be leading them, and maybe they're leading humans as well. So then you have a team of, 5 or 6 humans and 5 or 6 AI agents for you. And then each of your team members is also running a bunch of AI agents. And that changes the game in terms of the skill sets we need, what companies need to do from a learning and development standpoint. As we know with AI right now, garbage in, garbage out. So if we're not providing the right prompts and communicating effectively and essentially performance managing your AI agent, you're not going to get very good results out of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept to think about, like people managing agents. I guess it's not people management, it's agent management. But you're right, it's both. I think there will be a combination. And I haven't met anyone that's doing that yet. I mean, I've heard stories, I've seen some headlines and things like that. But you're right in terms of the overall sort of maturity in the market. I mean, there's a lot of people dabbling with agents, maybe in specific domains. Maybe it's customer service or HR agents and things like that. But to string those agents together into a team that's working together, and you have this sort of agentic kind of workflow that a person is managing, it is going to get really interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how people think about management in general, because a lot of people just don't want to be people managers, but would they be comfortable being agent managers? Maybe, because it's going to be, I don't know, I haven't managed a team of agents yet, so I don't know what that would be like, but it seems like, it's definitely going to take some different skill sets, and maybe it's not as, I would imagine it's not as challenging as managing a team of people who have their own, emotions and to just, I don't know, I guess agents should have a lot less variability in their behavior, one would hope. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's what's going to happen. I think teams are going to, as you think about how we redesign work and roles, I mean, everyone's role is going to start to change as you potentially offload, certain tasks and activities to some of these agents. And every company is going to be different in terms of their culture and their sort of risk tolerance, and how quickly they adapt and start deploying these types of agents. The performance management of an agent is an interesting concept. I mean, I immediately think of just the system instructions and some of these concepts around how you're training agents to begin with, model context protocol, and how you're ingesting new sources of information, and then how importantly how you evaluate those agents. So I don't know if any of your clients have any stories about how they're managing the performance of agents, but it seems like it's a much more, not necessarily like technical element of managing them, but maybe it goes back to the communication skills and how you want this agent to act, especially if it's in a human facing kind of role.
Yeah, and we see a couple avenues to go here. One on the performance management of the agent, and it's like, if anyone who's been in ChatGPT and built a custom GPT, it's what's the input you're putting in? What are the boundaries you're setting, the expectations? And then when you get an output from it, how are you correcting and updating that instruction so you get better results down the road? And there's some interesting, right now, I think for me, it's anecdotal, but I've heard of more formal studies on it, that if even saying please and thank you to the agent gets you more human output, or better output if you could put a label on better, but it's more traditionally human output by saying please and thank you rather than just do this, do that. And so same with humans, right?
Yeah. I mean, more recently, I've heard some conflicting stories about that. So I guess it depends on what the objective of the agent is. I mean, because you've got elements like around the tone that it's taking in how it communicates. And I think one of my concerns is, because I'm hearing some of the variability, it's not necessarily, maybe if you want better results, it is good to just be nice and talk to it like you would like another human, whether it's an intern or just a colleague or what have you. But the emotion or the tone that it takes is one element. I think the accuracy of the results might be another. And so, and I guess not just the accuracy, but like the consistency of the results, which I think ties back to, doing these thorough evaluations, right? Because, when you have this free form, like you're interacting with a human being and you have no idea what the human being's going to say, right? So you've got to sort of, it's not the same as doing software testing where you've got, a certain number of buttons and clicks and people can only do certain things, right? As opposed to just this free form. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about all the things, in some ways, thinking about all the ways that AI is different than traditional software. I guess is one way to think about it. But the variability is scary when you think about whether or not this can scale consistently. And maybe it depends on the domain that you're in. Certainly when I think about like the talent space and talent acquisition, talent management, it seems like consistency is pretty critical.
I agree. Yeah. And certain, if you're writing a blog post and using AI to help out with that, it's very different than having AI run your payroll system. Or, quality control for a nuclear reactor. Like there's different standards of excellence that need to be followed. And, one of the scary stats I read was it's something like 85% of people take the first output from an AI. Like there's no editing.
Right.
Like what?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I've seen the outputs that come from some of these, and that's for the custom GPT.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this ties into one of the other subjects I talk about on this show all the time, which you and I have talked about as well, is just like responsible AI, literacy and readiness. Like, don't completely outsource your critical thinking. You can't, especially if you don't have the domain knowledge to know that an answer is immediately sort of right or wrong. You should still be checking your sources. You should still be, iterating on your prompts if you need to, and make sure you have a certain level of confidence that's giving you, the correct output before you go and take action, upon that. But I think it's not even just the accuracy, but is this a proper scenario to use generative AI in the first place, right? Like we can't just use it everywhere we can. We should use it only where we should. And so sometimes you've just got to think, is this an appropriate use case to use AI? Otherwise, everyone's just going to just go straight to it as your shiny new hammer.
Yeah. And great analogy, like AI is a tool and we can use that tool for lots of different things. If you are trying to put a finishing nail in a fine-tuned project and using a sledgehammer, it's probably not the right tool for
Right.
the right project.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I talked about last time was, as you've sort of expanded your work in organizations, you're doing some work with individual contributors and some frontline employees, not just, executives with their, executive presence and some of those leadership skills, but just thought you could share a little bit about your experiences and some of the differences between, the reaction and the conversations that you're having with individual contributors versus current, senior leaders, or, at least people leaders.
Yeah, it's, again, most of my executive coaching had been with mid-level to senior leaders, directors, VPs, C-suite. And a recent contract I took on for coaching is, it's not all ICs, but ICs and frontline leaders. And yeah, typically a lot of first-time managers or people that have just been, long-time technical experts. And it is a bit more around the career side and how to, for those frontline leaders, for how to be a better leader. But it's interesting to see how, you get used to working with a certain mindset in executive suite, and then to be having coaching sessions with people who aren't at that level. It's been fascinating to see the perspective, the mindset, the challenges that they're coming with compared to the other leaders. And it does, we sometimes, each level, the ICs and frontline leaders often think, oh, the senior leaders don't care about us. And you get a lot of this disenfranchised frustration saying, oh, C-suite doesn't understand. And what I've seen is that everyone's stressed, everyone's overworked, everyone's trying to do the best job they can. And I think at the parallel I've drawn is that we're all human and we all have human challenges. We're just dealing with different areas of the organization. Typically, the higher up the organization you go, the more strategic and bigger picture the focus is, which is natural. And at the front lines, it's very siloed and technical, which again makes sense. But in order to really understand the bigger picture of the organization, I find it's helpful to step back and have people think about what other parts of the organization are dealing with and coping with, particularly from a senior leader standpoint. Hey, when was the last time you went and talked to frontline leader and just sat down with them and really had a good conversation about what are the challenges they're facing? When you're 3, 4, 5 levels removed from them, you sometimes forget. And even if you had gone through that in your earlier in your career, you sometimes forget what's going on. And with things changing so much right now, I'm seeing that that's a big opportunity for executive leaders to get more insight, but also for frontline leaders to pop out of their cubicle, we'll call it, and digital or virtual cubicle, and to try and think a bit about the bigger picture of the organization. What are some of the changes happening? And when we talk about, that's some of the conversations I've had regarding career side, is a lot of times people are so focused on what they've always done, not necessarily what opportunities are potentially coming down the road and how can they use their skill set and apply it in a new way.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, your focus on these sort of modern, leadership skills and communication skills and the storytelling and framing this sort of this like tidal wave of change that's coming, because it is, bigger and broader than, past waves of transformation, I feel like. And so how do you do that in a holistic way? I mean, I think what you're experiencing is probably important and like informative for both cohorts, right? For the leaders and for you to help them see where there might be some gaps in their thinking on both for both cohorts, right? Help the individual contributors and the frontline leaders, give them a perspective of senior leadership, and vice versa. But I also think that this is why I've always been an advocate for like continuous listening, not necessarily attributed to individual people, but aggregated and anonymized sort of social listening, so that you sort of have this pulse of what people are worried about and concerned about. And if you were to combine that, just spitballing here, if you were to combine that sort of ongoing listening about sort of general sort of workplace wellness, et cetera, issues, with a good sense of where people are on the sort of AI maturity and AI readiness journey, you really get a sense of, well, what can we discern from a combination of these signals that can help us communicate, more effectively, that can sort of get us to be more empathetic about the situation that people are in, that we can't just, throw more, structured, training at them. We can't just sort of dictate these things from the top down, that we've got to sort of understand what's going on from a grassroots perspective and let some of this change happen, bottom up, and let people know that, we're all trying to lift be this rising tide, right? That lifts all boats. And so how do we do that? How do we make people see that this is in everyone's, best interest, and, when the company can move forward, they're not doing it without the people. You can't move the organization forward if the people aren't coming along for the ride. I don't know. I would just like to see us, lean into those kinds of concepts so that we reverse this, decreasing engagement trend, right? Because otherwise, I don't know how we're just going to be at this stalemate, right? People are going to be disillusioned and scared, and the organization's still trying to grow. It's like these two things are not necessarily compatible.
Yeah. And one thing I found interesting, again, on the perceptions, is that you can have the same company, same level of employee, same department, and very different perceptions of the organization and the opportunities by different people. And in my coaching, we prior to starting, we have like surveys and questionnaires that people fill out, and even questions like, my company believes it supports my well-being. A simple question like that. Again, you can have L1 manager or whatever, and 10 different people, and you're going to have wildly different descriptions of whether they think that the company does. Same company, same department, same manager, and you'll get different perceptions. So I keep coming back to, one of the key things with coaching is that we help shift perspective and help you see situations through a new lens. And, your mindset, I always say, is the lens you see through the world through, the filter through which you see the world. And that's a self-made filter. We can change that filter through lots of different ways, questioning some of the maybe beliefs we have around the system, taking different action to show us different results. And there's so much human agency in this process that I think often gets forgotten when we're facing change like AI. I talk to people that have been in the tech world for 30 years, and they're like, we've seen lots of changes over the past 30 years. This one is so much bigger and more impactful than I think we even realize. And yeah, it's challenging, but how do we as humans step into our adaptability and lean into that discomfort to create our own opportunities rather than letting things happen to us? And I think that is one of the fundamental gifts that we have as humans, is the ability to do that. But you're right, it's not easy.
It's just an interesting, this like dichotomy. Like you've got to, while you're building and managing AI agents, you've got to make sure that you don't lose control of your own human agency. So it's an interesting sort of paradox there. No, really, really interesting. Is there anything you play with just outside of your work, just from a Gen AI perspective? Anything you find particularly interesting? Anything your kids are playing with?
As far as what my kids are playing with, my son uses ChatGPT all the time. My daughter doesn't.
Okay.
She's actually older. She's in university now. Surprisingly, she's not using it as much. I thought she would, but my son's very much the tech person.
Okay.
The main platform I use is ChatGPT, and I've customized and got a lot of custom GPTs and use projects all the time. I've used Claude. I've dabbled in Perplexity a little bit. Obviously tried Gemini and Copilot. ChatGPT seems to work the best for me for what I need, but I'm not in a Microsoft ecosystem or a Google ecosystem. And so obviously my wife uses Copilot all the time. But for me, the key thing I'm starting to dabble with is building an AI chief of staff that will coordinate a bunch of different other agents. And this takes another step. Maybe this is a different episode, is where people aren't managing AI agents. There's an AI agent managing them.
No, that's funny. I mean, it's probably a relatively common thing if people understand conceptually how to do that. But that was my first lovable project myself, was building a chief of staff and a dashboard. Like, I'm all over the place. I need you to go here. I need you to go here. Take this, take this, take this, and then give me a dashboard that shows me, helps me manage my day and things like that. So yeah, awesome. No, glad to hear you're tinkering yourself. I do think, there'll be a bunch of sub agents underneath. I just was on a webinar yesterday learning about how to connect, Notion to one of these, any kind of, automation, workflow automation tools and stuff like that. So yeah, there's definitely things you can offload, especially for us independent folks or individual contributors who just don't have people they can delegate, don't have humans they can delegate work to. It's a nice thing to be able to enable. So awesome.
Yeah, the one I was playing with was Relay.
Relay. Yeah. No, that's the one the session I was on yesterday. So how do I connect Relay to Notion, build an AI like project manager? And I got in, they were great. They were telling me how to take some of my unstructured information, like potential blog posts and my scribbles, all these, post-it notes I have, and how to basically convert from unstructured to structured data, put it into tables and connect it to, Slack and other tools. So yeah, these things are great. I mean, in another 6 months, year from now, I feel like I'm hoping I'll be a lot more efficient.
Yeah. And I would say 6 to 18 months from now, AI agents are going to be super easy to set up, and it's a bit clunky to get it set up now. You still need to know how to code to do it. And there are enough apps out there that can help you do it, but it's not a simple thing to just put it together at this point.
Yeah.
But a year down the road, it's going to be much easier.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we didn't get a chance to talk about your podcast. So maybe just a quick, plug for Working Well and what you're doing there, because you've been doing this for a while, right? You got like 75, 80 episodes now?
Yeah, I think we're just releasing the 80th episode. Started it during COVID as a side project, something I'd wanted to do for a while. And I had an intern that she picked that as her special project. And so we launched it, and I really enjoyed it. So we just continued to do it. And yeah, it's called the Working Well Podcast. And it's really that intersection of human performance, leadership, and business strategy, and have all kinds of guests on, everyone from data scientists at Gartner to someone who's a music therapist, about different playlists and how playlists can spark creativity and focus in workplaces. And so, yeah, all kinds of interesting things.
Awesome. No, it sounds really cool. I'll definitely put links to both Fresh Group and to Working Well in the show notes so people can check it out.
Awesome.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot, and I'll see you around the WRKdefined network, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tim, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.